If you buy honey from the supermarket, there is a very high chance you are not eating real honey at all. A European Commission investigation found that 46% of tested honey samples were adulterated with cheap sugar syrups. Even worse, every single sample tested from the UK failed authenticity checks. That means the jar sitting in your cupboard right now could be a lab-made sugar blend with none of the enzymes, antioxidants, or health benefits people buy honey for. But here is the good news. We investigated the entire British honey market to find 9 brands you can actually trust. By the time we reach number 1, you will never look at honey the same way again. Number 9. Rouse Pure and Natural Honey. A brand you have seen in every supermarket across the country. A name so familiar it almost feels like part of the British kitchen. And for many households, Rouse is the only honey they have ever known. But familiarity does not always mean quality, and accessibility does not guarantee authenticity. Let us be clear, Rouse is not a bad product. It is a better alternative to refined sugar, and the company does conduct testing and trace its honey back to beekeepers. The issue is what happens in between. Rouse sources honey from all over the world, including South America, Europe, Asia, and Oceania. They blend these different honeys together to create what they call a consistent taste. Consistent is the key word, because in order to achieve that uniformity, the honey goes through a process the company refuses to fully disclose, claiming it is commercially sensitive. When you blend honey from multiple continents and process it for consistency, you inevitably strip away some of the natural variation that makes honey beneficial in the first place. The pollen profiles shift, the enzyme content drops, the seasonal character disappears. What you get is a product that technically qualifies as honey under UK regulations, but behaves more like a sweetener than a living food. Rouse does not use the term raw on its packaging, and that tells you something. Their FAQ states the term is misleading, but that position conveniently sidesteps the fact that their honey is gently warmed and processed before bottling. For a product that markets itself on purity and natural origins, this distinction matters. If you are new to upgrading your honey, Rouse is a step in the right direction. It is widely available, reasonably priced, and better than the cheapest imports flooding the market. Think of Rouse as a gateway, not a destination, because from this point on the difference between honey and sweetened syrup becomes impossible to ignore. Number 8. Little Over Apiaries. Honey here is where things start to get interesting. Little Over Apiaries is not a name you will see plastered across supermarket shelves with flashy advertising. It is a family-run operation that started in the late 1990s as a small Derbyshire honey farm. And what makes this brand different is not the scale, it is the philosophy. Founder Tony Spacey built Little Over on one principle. Honey should arrive in the jar exactly as it came from the hive. That means no heat treatment, no blending, only gravity filtration to remove debris, while keeping the natural proteins and enzymes intact. When you open a jar of Little Over honey, you are getting a product that traditional bakers and health-conscious consumers have trusted for over 2 decades. The company has won 16 Great Taste Awards over the years. They hold the European Food Safety Inspection Standard certification, one of the highest quality marks available. And during the 2002 honey crisis, when chemical contamination forced many producers to pull their products from shelves, Little Over was completely unaffected. Their commitment to purity meant they had nothing to hide and nothing to recall. What really sets Little Over apart is their in-house laboratory. They test every batch for quality, enzyme content, and contamination before it leaves their facility. This is the kind of transparency that larger brands simply cannot match. When you buy from Little Over, you know exactly what you're getting. English honey collected from eastern counties, cold extracted, and packed in glass rather than plastic, because they believe in environmental responsibility as much as product integrity. The taste reflects the care. Reviewers describe it as genuine, rich, and nothing like the bland supermarket alternatives. If you are ready to move beyond processed blends and experience what British honey is supposed to taste like, Little Over Apiaries is your introduction to the real thing. And this is just the beginning of how different honey becomes once processing's taken out of the equation. Number 7. Northern Nectar Raw Honey. Northern Nectar represents a growing movement of artisan beekeepers who believe that honey should tell a story, not just fill a jar. Produced in the Oldham and Manchester area, Northern Nectar has been keeping bees since 2019. They started with a single colony and now maintain over 10 production hives. That might sound small compared to industrial operations, but small's exactly the point. When you keep fewer hives, you can give each one the attention it deserves. You can harvest ethically. You can ensure that every drop of honey reflects the local flora without shortcuts or compromises. Their honey is raw and minimally filtered. That means the pollen stays in, the enzymes stay active, the natural antibacterial properties remain intact. For people looking to support gut health, boost natural energy, or simply consume something their body can actually recognize as food, this matters more than any marketing claim on a label. Raw honey from northern producers also carries a distinct advantage. The cooler climate means bees work harder and the nectar concentrates differently. The result is often a richer, more complex flavor profile than you would find from warmer regions. It is the kind of subtle difference that disappears completely when honey gets blended, heated, and processed into uniformity. Northern Nectar is part of a wider network of family-run apiaries across the north of England, including operations in Northumberland, Cumbria, and County Durham. These producers share a common approach: sustainable harvesting, organic treatment methods, and a refusal to chase volume at the expense of quality. If you want honey that supports local communities while delivering genuine health benefits, the northern producers deserve your attention. But integrity is not limited to small batches. Sometimes it is protected by generations who never changed how honey was meant to be made. If you're learning something new here, hit subscribe and keep these eye-opening breakdowns coming. Number 6. Payne's Southdown. Honey Fred Payne set up his first colonies in 1922, and 4 generations later, the family still runs the operation from their base in Sussex. When a honey producer has been in business for a century, you can be fairly confident they are doing something right. Payne's Southdown honey comes from hives situated within the South Downs National Park. This is not just a marketing detail. The South Downs is one of the most biodiverse landscapes in Britain, home to chalk grasslands, ancient woodlands, and wildflower meadows that have remained relatively untouched by intensive agriculture. The bees forage on gentians, orchids, and dozens of native species that simply do not exist in more developed areas. What ends up in the jar is a living record of that environment. The honey is harvested twice a year, at the end of May and again in August, using traditional methods passed down through generations. They do not heat treat. They use only coarse filters to remove debris, while keeping all the natural goodness inside. Every batch is coded for traceability, so you can know exactly where your honey came from and when it was harvested. What makes Payne's particularly valuable is the seasonal variation. Because they do not blend or process for consistency, each harvest tastes slightly different, depending on what flowers the bees visited that year. This is how honey is supposed to work. It changes, it reflects the land, it tells you something about the environment it came from. With around 600 colonies spread across Sussex, Hampshire, and Kent, Payne's operates at a scale large enough to be accessible, but small enough to maintain quality. They even sell colonies and queens to other beekeepers, which tells you something about their confidence in their stock. If you want honey that carries a century of expertise and the character of England's most protected landscape, Payne's Southdown delivers exactly that. Number 5. Raw Honey Shop British Raw Honey. This is where the conversation shifts entirely. The brands from this point forward are not just good alternatives. They are actively working to undo the damage that industrial processing has done to honey's reputation. The Raw Honey Shop operates on a simple principle. Honey should never be heated. It should never be heavily filtered. It should never be blended beyond recognition. When you buy from them, you are getting a product that maintains its natural thickness, its stronger flavour, and most importantly, its full enzyme content. Enzymes are the key. Raw honey contains amylase, invertase, glucose, oxidase, and dozens of other active compounds that support digestion, immune function, and overall health. But these enzymes are heat sensitive. Warm honey above hive temperature, and they start to degrade. Pasteurize it, and they disappear almost entirely. This is why so much supermarket honey delivers none of the benefits that traditional honey was prized for across thousands of years. The Raw Honey Shop sources from British producers who understand this distinction. Their honey is thicker than commercial alternatives because it has not been processed into a pourable consistency. It may crystallize over time, which is actually a sign of authenticity rather than a problem. Real honey crystallizes. Fake honey stays perfectly smooth forever. Reviewers consistently note the intensity of flavor compared to mainstream brands. Some describe it as almost overwhelming at first, simply because their palates have been conditioned by years of bland, processed products. Once you adjust, going back to supermarket honey feels like drinking watered-down juice after tasting the real thing. For anyone serious about upgrading their health through diet, the Raw Honey Shop represents the kind of producer you should be supporting. Every jar is a direct rejection of the adulteration, blending, and processing that has turned one of nature's most perfect foods into just another sweetener. And the next entries take this even further. Number 4. Black Bee Honey. Now we reach a brand that is not just selling honey. They are actively trying to restore an industry that has been in decline for decades. Black Bee Honey was founded by Paul Webb and Chris Barnes, two former London rooftop beekeepers who became frustrated with the tasteless, blended, honey-dominating supermarket shelves. Their mission is simple: bring real, single-source British honey to consumers who have forgotten what authentic honey tastes like. Every jar of Black Bee Honey carries the name of the beekeeper and the location where it was harvested. This level of traceability is almost unheard of in the industry. When you see that information on the label, you know exactly whose hands touched your honey and whose bees made it. Compare that to a jar that simply says blend of EU and non-EU honeys, and the difference becomes obvious. The honey is raw, slow extracted, and produced in small batches from wildflower-rich areas across Somerset, Yorkshire, Lincolnshire, and beyond. They offer seasonal varieties that taste completely different, depending on harvest time. Spring honey is creamy and soft. Summer honey runs golden with floral notes. Autumn heather honey is dark and treacle-like. Winter ivy honey has hints of menthol. This is what honey diversity looks like when it has not been homogenized. Customer reviews tell the real story. People describe finely tasting honey that reminds them of childhood, before supermarkets flooded the market with cheap imports. Others say they can never go back to mainstream brands after experiencing the depth and complexity of properly produced British honey. When consumers actively refuse to return to what they used to buy, that tells you everything about the quality difference. But what really sets Black Bee apart is their environmental commitment. They are B Corp certified and donate 2% of their turnover to Plant Life, a charity that restores wildflower meadows. So far, they have helped create over 20 acres of vital pollinator habitat. When the UK has lost 98% of its wildflower meadows since the 1930s, this is not just marketing, it is essential conservation work. Black Bee Honey proves that commercial success and ethical production are not mutually exclusive. You can find their products in Holland and Barrett, Ocado, Booth supermarkets, and over 200 independent shops nationwide. For anyone who wants to support British beekeepers while eating honey that actually delivers health benefits, Black Bee is the brand to watch. Number 3, the London honey company Urban Honey, from rooftops across one of the world's largest cities. It sounds counterintuitive. Surely honey from the countryside would be purer, but the science tells a different story. And the London Honey Company has spent 25 years proving it. Founded in 1999 by Steve Benbow, a former photojournalist inspired by illegal rooftop beekeepers in New York, this company pioneered urban beekeeping in the UK before it became fashionable. Their hives sit on some of London's most iconic buildings, including the Tate, the Victoria and Albert Museum, Somerset House, and Fortnum and Mason. Each location produces honey with its own distinct character, reflecting the incredible diversity of nectar sources in the capital. What makes London honey special is the pollen profile. Bees in the city forage on hundreds of different plant species found in parks, gardens, window boxes, and green spaces. The result is a complexity that single-source rural honey cannot match. East London honey has citrus undertones. North London honey runs darker and richer. Each jar is essentially a botanical map of wherever those bees chose to fly. The company also participates in the Bee Farmers Association apprenticeship scheme, training the next generation of beekeepers over a 3-year program. They have received support from the Queen Elizabeth Scholarship Trust, which helps sustain vital skills in traditional and contemporary crafts. This commitment to passing down knowledge ensures that urban beekeeping will continue long after the founders step back. The London Honey Company is raw and unblended. They use sustainable beekeeping methods and have been recognised with a royal warrant of appointment from King Charles III for their beekeeping and honey production services at Highgrove. This is the first time in history a royal warrant has been granted for beekeeping. When the royal household trusts a producer with their bees, that is a level of endorsement no advertising budget can buy. Their honey supplies some of Britain's finest hotels and restaurants because chefs recognise the difference in quality. It costs more than supermarket alternatives, but you are paying for genuine craftsmanship, full traceability, and a product that has not been compromised at any stage from hive to jar. The London Honey Company represents what happens when passion meets expertise and refuses to accept shortcuts. Scaling usually destroys integrity, which is why what comes next should not exist at all. Number 2, Hilltop Raw British Honey. Founded in 2011 from a parent's kitchen table in Wales, Hilltop has grown to become the second largest honey brand in the UK, while staying true to the principles that started it all. That is a rare achievement in an industry where scale usually means compromise. Scott, the founder, started after receiving a beehive as a birthday gift while recovering from a back injury. What began as a hobby became a mission to build a honey brand that is better for everyone. Today, Hilltop produces raw British blossom honey that is coarsely filtered, unpasteurized, and packed to retain all the pollen goodness that processing destroys. Their British blossom honey comes direct from UK beekeepers and captures the essence of the countryside in every jar. Because it is raw, you get the natural enzymes, antioxidants, and beneficial compounds that make honey a functional food rather than just a sweetener. The flavour is fragrant and floral, ideal for drizzling over porridge, stirring into tea, or using in baking where you want honey's character to shine through. Hilltop became the first honey brand in the UK to achieve B Corp certification, meaning every aspect of their business has been examined to meet the highest standards of social and environmental performance. They have won multiple Great Taste Awards and the Wales Food and Drink Scale-Up Company Award 2 years running. These are not participation trophies. They reflect genuine excellence recognised by industry experts. What makes Hilltop particularly valuable is their accessibility. You can find their products in Sainsbury's, Tesco, Holland and Barrett, Selfridges, Amazon and Ocado. This means you do not have to hunt down a specialist supplier to get raw British honey. It is right there on the supermarket shelf, sitting next to the processed alternatives, but offering something fundamentally better. For consumers who want quality without inconvenience, Hilltop strikes the perfect balance between artisan values and mainstream availability. And here is where the list stops being about brands altogether. Number 1. Raw British wildflower honey from local beekeepers. The best honey you can buy is not a brand at all. It is a category. Raw, unblended, seasonal honey purchased directly from local UK beekeepers. Think about what you are actually getting when you buy from a local producer. Honey harvested from hives within miles of where you live. Pollen from flowers that grow in your own region. Enzymes that have never been degraded by heat or processing. A product so fresh, it might have been in the hive just weeks before it reaches your table. No supply chain stretching across continents. No blending to create artificial consistency. No corporate decisions prioritizing shelf life over nutrition. Local beekeepers across the UK sell their honey through farmers markets, farm shops, independent delis, and increasingly through online platforms. You can find them through the British Beekeepers Association, local beekeeping clubs, or simply by asking around in your community. The prices vary, but expect to pay more than supermarket honey because you are paying for quality, not volume. What you get in return is extraordinary. Local raw honey contains pollen from your specific environment, which some research suggests may help with seasonal allergies. It retains all 22 amino acids, 27 minerals, and thousands of enzymes that raw honey naturally contains. It changes with the seasons, tasting different in spring than autumn because the bees foraged on different flowers. It crystallizes over time, which is proof of authenticity rather than a flaw. Real honey does this. Fake honey does not. Beyond health benefits, buying local supports small-scale beekeeping at a time when the practice is in decline. The UK has lost roughly 75% of its beehives over the past century. When you purchase from a local beekeeper, you help keep traditional skills alive and ensure that someone in your community continues to care for these essential pollinators. This is the ultimate upgrade. Not a branded product engineered for mass appeal, but genuine British honey in its purest form, the kind your grandparents would recognise, the kind that actually delivers the benefits honey has been prized for across thousands of years of human history. So start where you are. Rouse is better than refined sugar. Hilltop is better than rose. But the real transformation happens when you find a local beekeeper, look them in the eye, and buy honey that was made within miles of where you stand. That is not just food. That is connection to the land, support for your community, and the healthiest choice you can make. The jar in your cupboard tells a story. Make sure it is one worth telling.